So I want this porthole to be viewable. You can see out of it wholly from the inside. And I feel like if I put it dead center, while it would look better, you wouldn't be able to use it nearly as much. If I'm just hanging out here in the back and need to peek forward, whether that's at anchor or on the way, I'd barely be able to see it if it's over on the midline. So I think I'm actually going to offset it. And perhaps just as importantly, I decided to go with a much smaller window. In terms of risk of the window just being knocked in from the inside if it were to get hit by water coming over the bow, and structural risk of taking away a bunch of this material, it just feels a lot better to not have such a wide window, even though it would be nice to have that much visibility. This way too, the whole thing can lie quite a bit flatter. Probably need a whole new set of gel coat all around here anyways, but figure if we can reduce the cracking a little bit just with the tape, we might as well. Mentally, that might have been the biggest hurdle right there. Woo. All right, there we go. Yeah, a little bit of sanding left to do, but overall, I'm pretty happy with that result. It's backwards, but conceptually it's a good fit. As long as I didn't get it stuck. So I don't think that that's prominent enough that it'll really need to be cut down. I'm not that worried about, oh, maybe a line could get caught there. Well, for now I'll just worry about getting some bolts in on it. Got another coat on these guys while I head out to get some more supplies, and then I had done just a little test to see how much I wanted to sand from the rub rail here, because it's looking pretty rough. And then decided to give it a shot with the same varnish. I was just going to do a tiny section in case I wanted to sand it back off. Came out looking really nice. Let's get some of those bubbles out of there. So I think that's going to be what I end up doing the rest of the way around here. So I'm not ready to seal it all in just yet. I know I'm going to have to take it out at some point to finish the other side of this panel. But for now I'm just going to tape up the big rim, or butyl tape up the big rim, and then butyl tape for these screws just so it's like roughly watertight. But with time I'll come back and I'll do a proper sealant job here. So now I got it all in. I gotta crouch a little bit to see through. I guess the light's not gonna come well, but I'm definitely happy with doing it off center like this. I think the only thing I would change is that probably would have moved a little higher, but very, very sturdy, very good material. And thankfully the bolts aren't offset. So they come straight through all the way. Use some butyl tape to seal each of the bolts. Do this a little more thoroughly before we do the final wrap. I know there's a little gap at the bottom, but really happy with how that started off. Got the pulpit off. Definitely seeing some water collected down in there. The material here seems fine. The deck beneath it's obviously struggling. This is the section I'm considering taking out and replacing anyways, but getting the fair leads off is also a bit of a task. Finish up getting this sanded off, get most of the side taken care of. Fair amount of the way through getting these old stickers off. It's a much slower process than I had ever expected, but I'm excited to get the new ones up. I think the Goo Gone I was initially using really screwed me up because it kind of seemed to break down the material where you couldn't peel it off in patches, but I am finally realizing that if I do it dry and get a little segment up, there actually is enough structure to pull up at least little segments at a time, which is better than how the first half went. And almost 2 hours later, we are finally free. It took so much longer than I thought it would. But nothing was coming off in sections like I expected. It took just little scrapings. But ready to put on the new one. Seems like the previous owner had a chip that they tried to cover with this letter. And there's some other imperfections back here, but when it comes to aesthetics, I'm just not a perfectionist. So I don't really plan on going through the pain of sanding and painting and rematching and smoothing. The actual material here seems to have done just fine. It doesn't seem to have been affected by the water, and it's not a sun exposed spot, so I'm not really concerned about the underlying material, so I'm just going to go for it. So I'm thinking something like that could be about right. I made myself a sanding tool. The idea being to put the sandpaper over the edges through the top here, and kind of put this chalk in to secure them. So that way then you could have a pretty long, flat or roundish surface to try and get kind of in these corners if you needed to. And then I think some planning would have helped because the sandpaper I have is too small to use with it. So we'll have to try that one again. I found a longer piece. We might actually be in luck. Might need a little more bulk on the middle chuck, but it feels pretty sturdy.
I've been sanding old sealant. That was stupid. That was really stupid.
Honestly, all this section probably needed was a good cleaning, but after sanding it, if I have intentions to do a whole lot else with the gel coat, it just seems like a good idea to get some experience with how it behaves in an area where if it all goes wrong, no one will ever know. But even though it looks pretty heterogeneous right now, it actually is sanded down quite smooth. So I'll give it a shot. It's such a small area. I'm not really gonna make a whole lot of this. If it runs short, it runs short, but I'd rather not waste with how expensive this crap is. Oh, that didn't work. It didn't work at all. Yikes. I'm sure there's a right way to do that. I'll hear about it someday. If I was going for cosmetics, I'd probably need another coat here. But just to get another layer of something in an area that used to look patchy and terrible, I'm good with that. I'll need a little time to dry, but next time we're here, I should be able to get those boards back on, which will be really nice. To fix the board that's supposed to go here, it's gonna have to be able to put those bracing plates on the probably on the outside, because the crack is not high above this. So this is about half a finger above that bottom line, which is all having to be above the bottom line of bolts. It's all gonna fit there. I don't want to carve this out just to fit it. So if it can't go below this line, it'll have to go on the outside, even though there's a bit more of a snag or chafe issue on the outside. But either way, I just like to have the board completed, help with water coming in. And the other one, probably just have to mimic it, because it's split in a similar way that this one's broken. So looking at this here, if we can't go below that line, realistically, I don't think that's enough material to try and hold this on, especially once you get out here. Even if I were to be able to secure it, that's not enough. It's just going to break the board again. So these will have to go on the outside. So yeah, I do have a little concern that long term I'll need to file this side down a little bit, and I'm just not totally comfortable with having that sharp edge in an area where all the lines are going to be on that area just forward of the winch. And it turns out the crack on the outside of the right one over here is quite a bit lower to the bottom. So the other plate was just too tall. It didn't really work. So I did get a backup plan of a slightly different one, and the screws are a little bit close to the brake for perfect comfort, but all things considered, I would be really happy with this as well.